It's true.
Good evening. Welcome to the zoning board meeting for May 30th, 2018. This meeting is being audio and video recorded per Massachusetts open meeting laws. Tonight, we have two hearings. One will be Bishra Hassan is coming in to us to talk to us a little bit about Lakeland Farms LLC and a modification he'd like to make to his special permit. And then we'll continue the public hearing for the enclave at Village Green with the Placido team. So Bishra, I'll first open it up to you.
I'm sorry, I might have no copies.
That's all right. You know what, do we have, wait a minute, do we have?
Nope, this is something new. That's fine. That's fine. Yeah. All right, we can give this to Medora. And
That's fine.
Joe. Yeah, great.
Okay, you sure? You need one yourself?
I actually do. I'm
Here you
sorry.
go, take one. Oh, just take it.
Yeah. Okay. What it is we are in the process
I'm aware of what's going on.
of building the infrastructure for 84 Lakeland, Cleveland Street, and the first page shows all the yellow is all the blasting that was done, and down to in some cases 20 feet deep. The second page shows the blue is elevation 112, the orange is elevation 102, and the green is elevation 93. So between the blue and the green, there's a 20-foot difference in elevation. And which, with all the blasting that was done, I'm a little nervous about the stability of the project. What I would like to do is I'd like to get your permission to pour all 32 foundations to stabilize the soil, and because under the foundations we did blast as well. And we crushed the stone and we placed it back in place. So I would like to, I'm sorry to give you my back. So I would like your permission to allow me to pour 32 foundations to stabilize the whole project. And the risk to the town is minimal because there's that much more work that will be done. And having gone through the experience of 108 Main Street, it's really messy to have people living into this development at the same time as excavation is being done and the same time as framing is being done. So what we would like to do is pour 32 foundations to connect all the sewer, the water, the electric to them, and this way all the excavation work will be done. We'll do all the finished grading. And then we'll start constructing the houses, the wood framing on top of that. Now, I may do like a few foundations, like maybe get halfway through done with the foundations before we blacktop, and then as post a bond, and as we are starting framing here, finish the rest of the foundations depending on the availability of foundation crews, the form guys. But we certainly will not have anybody living into any of the houses until all the foundations are in, because that experience was a little bit messy on Main Street that we'd like to avoid.
Question, Mr. Chairman. On 106, 108, why didn't you pour all the foundations early?
Because there is the zoning bylaw does not allow me to do that until the road is paved and a bond is posted in case the development is left alone and the developer disappears. There is something to secure the town. But in this case, we're not asking. And I talked to Bob Bullock, and he said that the zoning bylaw does not allow him to do that unless you give him a relief to do that. And he supports, because of the proximity of the foundations, the density, he supports doing what I'm suggesting, with your permission.
Well, that explains the reason. Okay.
How do you modify the?
Modify the special permit.
Okay.
Yeah.
One last question. Is all the blasting done on this property?
Yes, all the blasting is done, and the rocks have been crushed and replaced in the foundations. But again, that's not going to hold the soil, 20 feet drop. So it's really very helpful to the foundations will serve as a retaining wall.
Right. Blasting's done. Okay.
Is the next phase to start pouring foundations? Is that the next logical thing to do when you do a development like this?
Well, it can be done or it can wait. Yes, it makes logical sense to do it now.
Okay. And you're ready to go?
Right now, we're laying all the sewer pipes.
Oh,
Okay?
Okay.
So we're at the deepest, because the sewer is, the drainage is in, we're doing the sewer right now.
Sorry. Mr. Chairman, if, I think as we do more and more of these 40Bs, with hindsight, for projects in that 32 to 45 unit range, something like this makes perfect sense. If you're talking 70, 80, 90, 120 units, I'd probably have a little bit harder time personally agreeing to something like that, but for a project with 32, maybe 45, maybe 50 units, I think this makes a lot of sense, especially watching 106, 108. I would have, with hindsight, we probably should have done the same thing down there. So I think this request is reasonable and makes a lot of sense.
Okay. Any other questions?
see the downside.
Dan, did you have any comments with regard to 84 Cleveland Street with the pouring of the foundations? I know it got you on the spot, but
What's the request?
he would like to pour all 32 foundations. Obviously, it's in, our bylaw does not allow that, so we'd be doing a modification to the special permit. And again, he's got about a 20-foot difference up in elevation, so he'd like to get all his foundations in now, and then
And the
do his
roads
road
Some
paving.
blasting, a lot of blasting happened here,
Right.
Okay.
so to stabilize the soil.
And the base coat will be put in at the same time, or?
What we're proposing is doing the foundation now, and prior to any above ground construction, the base coat will be in.
Yeah.
Base coat.
Oh, so the foundations will be in, but not the road?
Correct. As part of the road, as part of the infrastructure, the reason is we would like to have, before we pave all the whole road, we would like to have all the sewer connected, water connected into the foundations, the piping, so that right now it's really awkward where we on Main Street having to do that while people are living there, while we're framing, because of the proximity of the foundations.
So you're going to have basically a rough dirt road with utility trenches going to all these foundations, but
Correct.
that's it? There's not going to be, it won't be improved beyond that until,
No, we're going to continue to work. The work will go on simultaneously.
right?
You know, as we're doing the infrastructure. In a matter of probably another month or so, we'll be blacktopped.
Okay.
And then in a month, we won't have 32 foundations, but we'll probably have, I don't know, half of them maybe.
What was the purpose of the rule that you can't do it this way? What was,
Just so developers didn't leave foundations and
leave foundations and walk away?
walk away. Right.
Well, what's the significance of like lot releases and things like that? Does it-
No, it was really just developers leaving, foundations sitting there.
And we've had that happen.
Yeah.
We've had that.
That was all.
In the security we have for the roads,
Right now, you don't have,
We don't.
but the security you're going to have is I'm going to have another $750,000 in addition to the $1 million I already spent on the infrastructure. The infrastructure is almost all done. The only thing that's left right now is the septic system and the sewer. But the water is done, the drainage is done, the drainage ponds are done and seeded and hydro-seeded. The retaining walls are being built right now out of stone. So the only thing that's left really is the sewer and paving.
and what's holding your feet to the fire on finishing the construction of the road? Is there,
I think it's being worked on daily.
oh, what's in the permit though? Is there something in the permit that you can't get occupancy permits, or you can't, is there a covenant that you can't?
In the decision, I'm not allowed to do any construction, house construction, until a road is paved and a bond is posted.
You can't build, you can't construct a house.
Correct.
Okay, that's not reasonable. I agree with.
Yeah, okay. Okay. All right. So what we've got to do is we've got to do a modification to the special permit. The special permit does not waive D2C7, which is the bylaw that does not allow for foundation or cellar hole for a residence. So the modification will be to waive D237, so you can pull a permit for the foundations. I think you're going to pull two permits, one for the foundations, and then one for the construction of the homes
Yes,
after
I
that.
talked to Bob, he's gonna tell me what to do, but
Right.
all he's gonna allow me to do is pour foundations.
Right, okay. So could I have a motion to modify the special permit for Lakeland Farm LLC to waive D2C7 to allow for the foundations to be poured, 32 foundations to be poured at Lakeland Farm LLC?
Does the special permit have a number? Does the special permit have a number that I can refer to?
He-
I'll just say
Yeah.
special permit for Lakeland Farm.
Lakeland Farm
Okay.
LLC.
I move to modify the special permit for Lakeland Farms LLC to waive section D2 and C7. Is there more to it? Is it D2.C.
7,
Okay, D2.C.7.
right. That's what I was wondering about.
Do you want to add something to the effect that no house will be sold or no occupancy permit shall be issued until the road is completed to serve that house?
That's already in the permit.
That's already,
That's in the
that's
permit.
in the comprehensive permit.
That provision is in the permit, okay.
Yes.
fine.
I think you agree that nobody would be living there until the foundations are poured.
And the roads.
Right, roads in, okay.
You may want to note that the building commissioner will determine if one or two permits will be required, one for the foundation, one for the house construction. Okay?
So, addendum to my motion,
Yes. There will be two permits, one for the
two permits
foundation,
issued, one for the
building construction,
building construction
per the, at the purview of the building commissioner.
at the purview of the building commissioner.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Very good.
Thank you very much.
Joe, you can write that up, though? It'll be a minor modification to the comprehensive permit.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you, Fisher. Welcome, Dan. Just in time. We wanted to put you on the spot. All right, now we're going to continue the public hearing for the enclave. And first up is going to be John. I think you're going to give us a review from our last time.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Director John Smollett, attorney for Norfolk Holding, the applicant. Just before we start, I want to introduce you to members of the project team who are here this evening. First, Thomas Ambassador Jr., Paso Development Corp., our project manager, Matt Murphy of Bowler Engineering, project engineering consultant, as well as Bill Scully. Bill Scully of Green International Affiliates, our project traffic engineer. We've distributed or circulated a proposed agenda that we'd like to generally follow. And if you're okay with that, Mr. Chairman, we'll just follow through with that.
Yes, go ahead.
And first, what we'd like to do is perhaps have the Beta Group provide a status update in terms of traffic review and other additional matters, and Jason Plord would follow up with that information to update the board, and then followed by Bill Scully, who would follow up with any responses to those traffic matters that he may want to provide additional input on. As a follow-up to our last hearing, the board asked us to revisit the conceptual layout of the proposed development, explore variations in unit locations and setbacks and the like to sort of examine making the project a little less linear in terms of design. And so Matt Merver of Bowler Engineering will walk you through some of proposed adjustments to the site plan in line with what was discussed at the last hearing. Also, Bowler had worked with Beta's land use architectural consultant, Glenn Fontecchio, who's here this evening, who will provide some additional input as part of discussions he's had with the applicant's project team. And then we'd certainly take any additional comments the board may have or questions the board may have. So with that
Very
said.
good. Okay. John, do you have an extra copy of that agenda again? For some reason, I do not.
We have a couple copies. Yeah.
Okay. We have one here. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Jason Plord with Beta Group. So we did our initial review on the traffic study. There's been responses that have come back from Green International. Instead of keep going back and forth with different letters and things like that, what we've been trying to do is we've been working out different issues and clarification matters between the engineers, so that we could come to you with a full plan that addresses all of our concerns and issues. Right now, there are about 5 or 6 issues that we still have outstanding that Green International is in the process of providing additional information for. One of which is, Saturday data and the width of the roadway, pedestrian walkways, site distances, and then the impacts of Cleveland Street at Rockland. So it's still a work in progress. So that's why we haven't formalized another letter for the board yet, but we're awaiting additional information so that we can give it our blessing and a good bill of health. But so we're still working things out right now.
Jason, excuse me, what were the Saturday data with the roadways, sidewalks?
Yeah. So
What were the other outstanding issues?
So Saturday, the width of roadway, sidewalks, site distances, and then the impacts of the development. So pretty much it's one methodology for the trip generation that they used showed that it was exceeding the increase of 10 seconds or more and a drop in level of service on one approach. And so based on the rules and regulations for subdivision of land and site plan approval, that says that they have to do mitigation measures. But based on a different trip generation methodology that is more appropriate for this use, that was not used in the traffic study, but in the supplemental information, the response to comments that Green used, we feel that that's more appropriate, and it's only a 5-second increase in delay on that approach instead of 10. So what we would ultimately recommend is a monitoring study, which is also in the rules and regulations, to be conducted 1 year after full occupancy to make sure that all the increases in traffic, what is that going to actually look like? Are there additional improvements that are required out there or not? Because, we do the best that we can with different trip generation methodologies. What is the most appropriate for the development? The one that was used in the traffic study is a lot higher than, a senior, residential living area, 55 and plus. We really want to get our handle on it, and so that's where the monitoring study kind of comes into play, to help knowing what the actual trips would be.
So you, they were using a trip generation that was more applicable to non-age restricted?
Correct.
And so you're saying that when you apply an age restriction to the project?
It lowers it. It lowers their trip generation and lowers the impacts.
So will the
That's correct.
Intersection then at Cleveland and Rockwood, will that stay at E? 'Cause didn't that go from E to F?
It will still drop to an F, but instead of a 13-second delay, where the threshold is 10 seconds, it's only going to be a 5-second delay. So right now, I'm using numbers off the top of my head. I think it's like no build conditions, so that's the future conditions without the development, is like a 47-second delay, and that's a level of service E. And then it goes up to, 52 seconds, 53 seconds, right around there. So 50 seconds is the break point between E and an F. So it's kind of like right near that borderline already. So I really think that, the monitoring study is the way to go. And then if there are delays as a result of this development that are increasing congestion and delays on that approach, then I think that it's up to the town to say, this is almost like a mechanism for the town to say, hey, developer, look, you did your monitoring study, and your monitoring study is even showing either you do have impacts or you don't have impacts. And if you do have impacts, you should work with the town and trying to find out what we can do out here to mitigate your impacts. But because there's 2 different trip generation methodologies, one, you're not really triggering that 10-second increase threshold. One, you are. So there's different ways that the town can go on this one, but I would strongly recommend the monitoring study.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yeah.
So the monitoring study is, you're recommending it after the project's done?
So that's the thing, is that
Why would we do it after the project's done?
because what you really want to do is you want to do it before and after to try to find out what the increase in traffic is going to be. Because the real problem is Cleveland Street, the Cleveland Street approach to Rockwood, it's hard to know if all that traffic is going to be associated with this development or other traffic that's cutting through the area. So, they want to do a traffic count at their driveway as well as at the intersection. So that if they do their count at the driveway, they know how much traffic is actually going in and out. In which trip generation methodology is it more similar to? The one that was in the regular traffic study or the age-restricted one? And then you can really figure out what the true impacts would be.
What would be the mitigation? I mean, at that point, you can't start removing units. So
No,
what is your,
no,
what
you-
kind of mitigation could you do?
I think that it's, could it be widening lanes? Could it be safety improvements? Because it doesn't always, improvements don't always have to be improving or reducing delay, right? I mean, it could be multimodal improvements, whether it's bike lanes or sidewalks or crosswalks or improved sight lines or signage. There's so many different things, but I think that that's really something that should be coordinated with the police department, with the DPW, and with the board. I mean, it depends on what those impacts are going to be, because you don't want them to put in a brand-new traffic signal if, number one isn't going to be warranted, and number two, it's not a result of this development, because they don't generate as much traffic to warrant a traffic signal. So, you kind of want to make it kind of in line with their development, what their improvements would be. It's not like the last man in has to pay for everything.
Okay.
So, but in order to really understand what their traffic impacts would be at that intersection, they would also have to count their driveway.
Did you look at this dead end issue that we raised? I don't think you were here at the last meeting.
I was not.
And we were kind of scratching our heads over whether or not this project is further exceeding the dead end length requirement in our subdivision regulations. I think it's something that we'd like you to look at and
Yep.
give us an opinion on. We'll probably ask the same of other folks.
I'll take a look at it, but, my general feeling on any type of, a one-way in, one-way out is, it's really a safety thing about emergency vehicles.
Right.
I live on a roadway that has access to over 200 houses and with a second house on the road. No problem getting in and out, but what if a tree kind of goes down across the path and, and then they can't get cars in and out and emergency vehicles in and out. So that's really the true safety kind of thought behind the length of a roadway, is that if there's an emergency access, that's the key. Now, that's just talking generally without really knowing what happened at the last meeting.
Yeah, I was more curious about how that regulation is applied in other towns and what your experience might be. Just more of a legal interpretation question than anything else. It's just
Yeah,
because this is like a lollipop shape, and so how does
Right.
that work in terms of the regulation saying you can't have, what is it, 500 feet or
500 feet.
500? You can't have a dead end road longer than 500 feet. Well, what if you have a loop there? That's
So my understanding that it's all tied in with emergency vehicles, and it's all about the safety, because if it was just one roadway coming in without the loops and everything like that, just one roadway, totally different situation where that would be more of a safety concern. Where you have there's different ways to be able to get around inside based on the most recent plan, I believe, but there's still only one point of access out onto Village Green.
right.
So it's a matter of how, could Village Green be widened in case there's a broken down car out there, right at the mouth of Village Green and the roadway to come into the site, for emergency vehicles to be able to bypass. I mean, maybe that's something to consider. But, I'll leave that up to Mr. McGrath to take that one on. Or the architect. Sorry, Glenn.
Any questions for Jason? Any more? Okay,
All right, thank you.
thank you.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, so
Yes.
the 6 outstanding issues, Jason,
Yeah.
what's the next step for you?
Just wait.
So we're just
Just waiting
waiting
for,
Mr. Scully to be able to provide us with the additional information.
All right.
And then, once we get that, then we can finalize our
A letter.
final letter. Yeah.
Okay.
How soon is Mr. Scully providing that to you?
I'm not sure yet. They're in the process of being able to get all that information together.
And you'll take a look, yeah, look at that 500-foot, just to look at the subdivision regulation, just to see. Yeah, and again, I think Dan's right, the legal interpretation of what is considered a dead end versus, like I said, a lollipop loop or whatever.
Right, loop roads versus,
Yeah,
just
a
a
straight road.
cul-de-sac road, yeah.
If you remember when we did 25 Rockwood Road, even though it had a loop, it had a leg that went off to the left side.
That's right,
And that exceeded the 500 feet, which eventually was shortened.
right.
Yeah.
That's right, yeah, I mean, I'll
Okay.
I'll take a look at it.
Okay. Good. Thank you,
All right,
Jason.
thank you.
Bill, did you have anything to add to that, or? Bill Scully, yes. When are you going to have answers to us?
Bill Scully, Green International. Answers shortly. So, as Jason was saying, we're working through some of the issues, and some of it just requires we're doing some verification in the field, where layout lines are and everything. So, site distance and looking at the issues of either a wider street or what type of mitigation might be considered. To a degree, depends on the final project as well. So we are working through all those things, and we have other Saturday data in town that we'll forward to Jason in support of. I mean, it's a residential project. We believe we've looked at everything correctly, the time periods, and we'll provide that information in support of that. And but two things. One on the sort of relates to the dead end. So that was in a large part why the project access was modified. I think we talked about that at the last meeting, where the entry into the project becomes more of a boulevard with a median. So, as Jason was saying, the chance of a tree falling, that might block a lane. Well, it's not going to largely block a lane, a median, and another lane. So you'd always have one way in, and I tend to agree with the loop. Once you're past that short section of entry, you're in the loop section, and if one area within the project gets blocked, you've got multiple ways of getting out of there to the other one. And also, we're in between. This project is in between. Village Green was approved, extended. Past Stanhope, I think, is the next street down, and I think we would be determined to be far less of a quote dead end than exists out there today. So anyways, we should. I'm expecting within the next couple of weeks we will have our traffic-related issues hopefully put to rest.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Bill? Okay. Matt, I think you're up next.
Hi, good evening. Again, Matt Merva with Bowler Engineering. Just wanted to run through kind of where we left off last time and where we are today. Since our last discussion, we prepared some concepts to review with the architectural peer reviewer, with Glenn Fontecchio and Bill McGrath. To that meeting, we brought some alternatives that tried to replicate the density and character of Village at River's Edge, which I think at our last discussion was described as more of a model for this project and what people would like to see that look like in terms of look and feel, character. So we brought some rough trace concepts to that meeting, had a great work session, designed charrette, and came up with kind of a preferred alternative at the conclusion of that discussion, which we brought back to the office to refine a little bit, still in kind of sketch format, because obviously we want to get some feedback from the board. But we did look at it in terms of trying to break down kind of the long linear runs of homes into smaller clusters, and you'll see in our new sketch that's the character we've tried to achieve. So just to back up, this is what we initially came in with when we first met. and had revised that plan to the one you see here, which had provided more central open space. We moved the leaching field from this area into the central green and didn't have any units that didn't back up onto open space. So we thought that was a nice benefit of this plan. But some of the discussion last time around was that these long runs of garages that face the street just gave the appearance of density that we might want to try to take another look at. So the concept you see here, which I can pass out 11 by 17s of, if you wouldn't mind passing those down. So just to walk through this concept, we still have a loop,
Yes, it was.
but you'll notice that no homes actually front on the loop on the inside. So this is just a dedicated common open space. It would be used for our leach field, but could also house a gazebo, and the mailbox structures we've discussed, and some additional guest parking. We've doubled the number of guest spaces on this concept, so we're up to about 30 guest spaces for the project, which has 56 units still. We kept the spacing and alignment of the homes that face the abutters on the north edge of the plan. We had done a lot of work with the abutters in trying to gain some consensus on creating some space there, so we really sort of held that road, but actually did widen it out to 24 feet in this concept. So the loop itself here and this main spine are both 24-foot roads. But off of those roads, we have smaller clusters of development, really three what you'd call driveways. So these are 18 feet wide, these loops here, and those allow for one-way access. We've actually run turning templates on this sketch to make sure we can get trucks through there. But what that does is it prevents all of these units from facing out onto the main road. So driveways into the garages face these common drives rather than out onto the common space. So the look as you travel around this inner loop is one of less density because you're seeing more landscape at this edge. You're not seeing the broad garage fronts in those locations. And really, we just have 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of collector driveway access points off of that main loop. We've tried to maintain having a lot of units face out onto open space. You can see we've really made efforts to do that. We've tried to utilize the one-story units at the perimeter of the project, and then the 2 stories are more towards the center, so that the view from the abutters is to a shorter profile home. So those are kind of the main characteristics of the new plan. We do want to try to get some feedback, but also just wanted to, for comparison's sake, look at, this is the plan for Village at River's Edge. So you can see kind of the configuration of the units. Excuse the coloration here. This was kind of an irrigation zoning plan, but just wanted to illustrate kind of the look of the density, and people here are familiar with how this looks when you drive through it. So we just wanted to show this in relationship to our plan to give you a sense for how that scales off. So we just took a portion of it. This is Village at River's Edge. This is our site. This has about 17.5 acres of developed area within this red zone, 90 units, so that equates to about 5.18 units per acre. Our plan here equates to about 5.15 units per acre when you kind of hold the same line at the back of the units, about 15 feet off the back edge of each unit. We didn't count the central open space in our overall acreage. That would actually decrease our mathematical density, but just wanted to give you a sense for kind of the look and feel and the closeness of the homes in this scenario, which is built, and the proximity of the homes in our proposed development, and the clusters that you see here. We've really tried to replicate that on this plan. So just to give you a sense for that density comparison.
Hey, Matt,
Yes.
can I ask you a question? Can you
Sure.
flip back that slide, please? All right, so on the left is your river's edge, and you've drawn that red line, but the property boundary is the solid line, right? The black solid line?
This is the property boundary.
Right, so don't you have, you have greater setbacks, rear setbacks and rear yards on River's Edge, it looks like, than you would on the proposed project?
Back here,
Yeah. And what's on the south side, the bottom, is that, where's the property line over there?
it's right around here. The overall property is much larger, just as our overall property is much larger. You know, our property on this project extends way down to here, so to
Right, but-
compare
but-
property size to unit count is tough to do without, finding some way to compare them apples to apples. Do you know what I mean?
You're right, and it's always fraught with conflict, but, I mean, on the enclave, you've got a stream there you gotta deal with, and so you're really in the buffer zone on the south side of it. On the north side, you're dealing with abutters, and you've got fairly small setbacks relative to what the zoning requires. I mean, it's, what is that, 15 or 20 feet from the buildings?
On the north side,
Right.
to the abutters.
So I just want to make that point. I understand your point, but I don't think this is truly apples to apples either. I think it,
Well, it's a way to compare density. Buffers aside, I understand your point about buffers, but this project also had a riparian zone and setbacks from resource areas, and there's a great deal of undeveloped area as part of this project as there is on this project. So we tried to find the most common sense way of honing in on what, if you want to talk density as a units per acre of developed area, that's what we've tried to show here. I understand your
Okay.
point. We just had to pick some way of just comparing
yeah.
two.
I mean, I personally
because
think
the
that-
property sizes are
Yeah.
completely different.
I mean, I personally think the best way to compare it is to take the upland area of both sites and divide that by the number of units. But I mean, there's a lot of different ways of doing it. I mean, it might be useful to have both plans out in front of us and on the table, so you can actually see both sites completely. But go ahead.
And that's part of the equation. Really, the other part is, what does it look like from the streets that you're driving on? And that's part of what this is trying to illustrate, is that, yes, there are some homes that front on the loop roads, just like we have here, but many of the homes are clustered into smaller driveways that create little sub-neighborhoods within the overall neighborhood, and that's really what we've tried to do here as well, to kind of break down the sense of the density from the street, which is really where it'll be perceived. The proximity to the abutters to the north, we've had in-depth discussions with them, and think we've arrived at a plan that meets the needs, and we've also tried to keep the building height low where we are bordering and abutting neighbors, and our taller, narrower units are where we're just facing out onto open space.
Matt, what was the road width over at River's Edge? Was it all 24, or do you know what the road width was at River's Edge? 24?
24.
All the roads at River's Edge were 24. So the only road on this one, which is 24, is the main loop coming in, is that correct?
Yeah, this is
So-
a boulevard, so that's
That's 24.
two roads, and then it's 24 feet up to the cul-de-sac
point.
here, and it's 24 feet around here. Let me
Okay.
go back to the color plan. So this would all be 24, and this is 24.
Okay.
And then these are 18-foot wide driveways essentially, which is how these were done here on Village at River's Edge.
But all of River's Edge is 24, right?
The roads, not the driveways, right,
Right,
Tom?
the roads, all the roads at River's Edge are 24.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Matt,
Go ahead.
is the cul-de-sac, did you say that's a one-way?
That would also be one way. We did run a delivery truck on there too. That inner circle with the dashed line would be like a grass pave or something that a wheel could run up over.
Okay. I'm just looking at that first unit. That one right there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just looking, if you're the person living at that house, my thought is, if you're living there, and your spot's right there, you're just gonna pull right in. But if
Yeah,
you're,
right-
if you're
right
in this
here.
spot here, I don't know how that interface might work with that island right there.
No, that makes sense. And we've got more detailed design to do on this. This could just be a flush cobble that you could drive over, just a change in the paving, not necessarily a curbed
Just
island,
something I
but
noticed.
that makes sense.
What is that circular section down to the south?
This is a stormwater feature, so we had a very long linear kind of detention area along this, but we've sort of consolidated that. And we actually have an open space connection from here down between these into a path around that could get you into the wooded area. So we're really sort of extending the green down through those homes into the more natural setting.
But that's going to be a retention basin?
Right in the center here, and that still has to be sized. This is just kind of a placeholder right now.
Why are you showing a walking path around the rim of it?
It's to get access into the woods here. So it just skirts around it between the homes and the detention area.
Mr. Chairman,
ahead, Mike.
Matt, are there any sidewalks on any of these streets, one-way, two-way, any sidewalks at all?
We haven't shown any yet. We definitely have sidewalk on the interior green. We've got to get into that level of detail in terms of where the sidewalks would be, but we're just kind of showing the amenity level connections right now. I believe we had shown some sidewalks on the previous concept on that inner loop here. So that's kind of consistent with how we've shown it now, but we're still looking at that.
Is that a gazebo?
That is.
Matt, is it safe to say there'll be a sidewalk accessed from any one of the homes here?
We don't always necessarily do that on the driveways because those aren't getting a lot of traffic, and it's easy enough for someone to walk down their common drive to get to the common walk. But again, that's something we're still looking at. We haven't gotten into the completely designing the pedestrian circulation system yet.
And are those two things right there, are those mailboxes? Those,
Yes, we used to have that feature out here at the outset, but those are the common mailboxes. There might just be one. That's kind of a placeholder right now, but we wanted to get that into the common area and away from the abutters. So they have parallel parking access to that.
And it looks like all the visitor parking is pretty much around the center green.
That's how we showed it right now. We've increased it from where we had it before. I could see potentially adding some parallel spaces as you came back into this area, but we also have people's driveways and the common units in their garage, obviously, plus their spot along the street. So in an overflow situation, this is really kind of the main area for parking right now,
Some
for
additional
guest
parking.
parking.
Some additional parking closer to where the furthest points are.
Understood.
Would be
Yeah, I
helpful.
think that makes
Yeah.
sense. We can definitely take a look at that.
Mr. Chairman, if
Go ahead.
you permit me, if you're looking for some feedback, personally, I'm very disappointed in this new plan. I'm not happy with it at all, based on some of the feedback we gave you at the last meeting. I still get the feeling that you're trying to take 10 pounds of potatoes and put them into a 5-pound bag for this whole project. We've gone to 18-foot roadways, and I was unhappy with 22. That's unacceptable. The livability and ease of getting around this project is unacceptable. The backyard setbacks are minimal, that's unacceptable. The sidewalks, I don't know where you're gonna put sidewalks in 18-foot roadways, that's unacceptable. So if you're looking for some feedback from me, it's not working at all. Very unhappy.
Yeah, just to respond to that, one of the big comments that we got is the look at the village at River's Edge. And actually, the driveways that are duplicated here, actually, a little bit of background, actually, Matt worked with the landscape architect that designed the village at River's Edge, so he was very familiar in how that laid out. But the driveways that are at the village at River's Edge are 18 feet or less that actually service those pods of homes. 24-foot wide main roadways, same at the village at River's Edge. The density is equivalent to that. If you looked at setbacks and things, yes, we have 25-foot setbacks along this area up here where the neighbors are and that we met with and tried to spread the buildings out a little bit more, as Matt mentioned, to accommodate views from their backyards. At the at the village, I believe that there was one area there was a 50-foot setback. All the other ones were 20 or 25, similar to this layout here. The buildings at the village are as close as 15 feet. We tried to maintain 20. These are all 20 in this area here. The sidewalks obviously haven't been put in yet, so that, you know, this was just a concept with everything. And also, the 18-foot width one-way driveway is actually in accordance with the subdivision regulations for the town of Norfolk. So I think we did do our best effort to listen to what was existing at the village at River's Edge. If that's not where you wanted to go with it or something, and it's just unit count or something, then that's a different issue altogether, and I'd have some follow-up questions with that if that's where we're going with it. You know, I mean, is it that they're too close together? If they're too close together, then they're wider and further apart than they are at the village. Do we look at triplex or quad units or multi-level garden-style units? One of the thing is here is we actually have, I think there's 20 ranches that we did to actually do a lower profile, actually, so it's a little lower for the neighbors and it's attractive to the age-restricted audience that we're trying to market to. But we could go with 2-story homes, and that would actually decrease. You can see the difference in size between the 2-story homes. You can point those out, Matt, right there, and actually the ranch model. But that actually hurts us in two effects. It makes it more visible from the neighbors' homes, and actually it doesn't offer one-floor living for everybody either. So, I mean, I think we tried our best to listen with what was going on with the village, what everybody liked over there. If there's something more and more detail, I really would be happy to listen with it, but that's where we tried to go with everything.
I think I'm comparing it to the other 40B projects that we've done, and the density on this is higher than the other 40B projects we've done in town. I think we were closer to 4.3 or 4 per.
Below this one was a higher density.
Yeah, this is a much higher
I don't have the
density.
paperwork.
Yeah, I'm just very nervous about setting a standard for 40Bs, Tom, that's in excess of what we've been doing for the past 4 or 5.
Yeah, I realize you're allowed to go up to 6, and plus we're only counting the building envelope here that the buildings are in, not the total area either, with everything. If we were to count the total area, it would go down, and I can understand, we've had that discussion. There's all different ways to look at it, too, on everything.
I mean, I go over to 106, 108, and I looked at some of the decisions we made back there. With hindsight, I'd never do it again. Those 22-foot roadways, even though they're one-way, unacceptable. This is just, it's way too tight. Yes, you can engineer it to meet our bylaws, but this is, I'm looking at it from a livability perspective, and I'm just want to back into the right number. This does not, I know I've got to be, come up with some hard facts, but this does not feel right to me, based on all the others that we've done so far.
Well, I guess, on one hand, I'm hearing everybody likes the Village at River's Edge, and on the other hand, this matches that density and that feel, and I guess I don't know which way to go with it. It just seems like it's just a reduce units, and that's it. That's the answer with everything, because we've met it on all the other criteria, I feel like, in comparison with things.
I think from a planning perspective as well, I think with respect to the Village of River's Edge, I think that, we're not looking at it purely as numbers, we're looking at it from a planning perspective. I think it closely matches what was approved under 40A for the Village of River's Edge. And it's the same type of design. And I'm sure we could work on some of the roadway widths and try to make some adjustments. Again, this is a conceptual, but the issue or the concern last time was more of the linear look. And so I think that we've done a really good job of taking away that linear look and providing for more of a mix of visual interest around throughout the project. So, and typically, in terms of density, I'm not sure that you could match density from one project to the next. I mean, there used to be a rule of thumb of 8 units per acre for an ownership project. That was in the regs for many years, and from a planning perspective, I guess the DHCD had decided to get away from density and look at more at planning. And this is, I think, very consistent with what was planned and extensively reviewed as part of River's Edge. And it's, frankly, I mean, this is the first time I saw the River's Edge layout tonight. I don't see the difference, except for a couple of variations in terms of roadway widths.
I'm not holding River's Edge up as the standard. I'm looking at, for example, these units. This is like an island. I mean, I don't have to sell these, but I don't know. I wouldn't want to live on this island. You have no privacy. These 3 units on this little island, there's no privacy. You got people driving here, here, here. I mean, I just don't like the way this is laid out. It's just they're like islands, and who would want to live there? Again, I look at it from that perspective as a potential buyer. It just doesn't feel or look right to me.
All right. I'm going to ask Glenn, since he's fresh in from Ireland. Do you want to give us, since I know you worked a little on this, do you want to give us some perspective, Glenn? Is that all right, Matt?
Good idea.
Yeah.
Okay,
Your thoughts, Glenn?
Oh, great. Middle button. So, Glenn Fontecchio, architectural consultant for your record. First off, I apologize that I wasn't at the last meeting, so I don't know everything that was discussed at the last meeting. I kind of know a secondhand version of what the directives were to go forward. So that was sort of how we approached the work session. So, like, I wasn't aware that there was a directive to try to reduce the number of units. That's something we can talk about. But to start with what we talked about at the work session, where I think they did improve things, is, the linear runs are reduced. I think that there's some opportunity for rotating of some of the units so that, again, it doesn't feel quite so rectilinear, for lack of a better word. I think that, some of these units, there can be some reorienting so that, for example, these 2 units aren't facing directly into each other. So that was one thing we discussed, the fact that now a lot of the garage doors in this side of the project don't face onto the green in the main road. I think it's an improvement. That's something we've talked about in past developments, that when you've got a straight road and all you see along it are garage doors. So I think there's been improvement there. We did discuss in the meeting, and I am concerned about verifying that fire trucks can make this end cul-de-sac, because that would be a dead end if they can't. When we discussed this at the meeting, the thought was that this loop and this loop, being the wider roads, and fire trucks could make that turnaround, worked fine, and then these were one-way secondary loops because there were fewer homes, but again, a fire truck wouldn't be trapped in these one-way loops because they've got an outlet, whereas this, there is no outlet, so it has to be able to make it around and out. I think it's great that they've incorporated more shared parking for guests, visitors, but I think that the comment about it all being located right here is a little problematic. I mean, if I lived out here, the idea, especially in an age-restricted community, figure a lot of your friends are probably your own age, do they really want to have to walk all the way from here to go visit you there? But I think there's some opportunities for tucking in some smaller, whether they be angle parking on one-way loops. So you can get a couple spaces out here, maybe a couple of angle spaces down there, so that you limit the distance people have to walk from visitor parking. I think that the connection through from the green out is good. Now, when we discussed this, if I understood correctly, this water detention is actually a dry system. So other than during a major rain event, this is just a bold, naturalized lawn area, correct?
Right.
And it's not going to have fences around it?
I don't believe so.
Okay. So I think with that said, this actually starts to feel more like a natural green feature as opposed to if it was a wet marsh all the time, if it had a chain link fence around it, then yeah, nobody wants to walk around it. If it's something that is treated more in the vein of a natural bowl that then gives you access out to these woods, just thinking about the pragmatics of somebody having a dog in this community, I think we do need some more sidewalks in these outlying areas, but that you can walk around here, that you can walk out through here, just for the purposes of taking your dog for a walk or going for a stroll yourself. One of the other things we talked about is that all of these units, that their sides face out, instead of just being dead sides, that those might be where your deck is located, or an architectural feature that adds some interest to the side of the house and avoids having the garage doors facing onto the main road. Obviously, as the buildings are detailed, that's something that has to be worked through. The one thing I liked about this layout as opposed to the other one that you flashed up, I forgot the name of it, is those little sub-communities were all dead-end cul-de-sacs. So there's an 18-foot road, and you kind of had to do this sort of T maneuver to get back out of them. So if the driveways are full, that one actually seems like it would be problematic. The fact that these actually are one-way loops alleviates that problem. The only place somebody's got a T is, over here, and over there. So it seems, compared to that other plan, to be a better traffic flow. All that said, if the goal is to minimize the unit count, my understanding is that this works best in groups of 4s. I think that there's an opportunity, just throwing it out there, if this double unit and that double unit went away, I think that there's the potential for plan improvements. It would allow this road to stretch out a little bit longer, reorient this unit so it's not quite as cramped here, but increase the green passage space so that you don't feel like you're really going between people's backyards, but this would actually be a broader green connection out to the woods. And then as you brought up this condition here of trying to shortcut the one-way loop, if this double unit were gone, it would allow this unit to be slightly reoriented, this unit to be slightly reoriented, and I think it helps the traffic flow in that area. And again, gives another bigger green, oops, did I?
Maybe.
Oh.
You just click ahead.
Yep, start over. Okay,
Getting
allows another space, kind of like this, that all of the units have this green relief space out, that it would give a green relief space out to the natural wood area, that potentially what I think might be something worth investigating is a pathway along the back and back through, so that it allows now a real walking loop for the community, as opposed to having to walk along the roads all the way to here and then get out this way. If from this end in here you got out, connected into this, it's just a better system.
Excuse me, Glenn, what was
Yep.
the first, I saw the second, what was the first unit you said?
I mean, if we were going to say we're dropping 4 units out, and again, this wasn't something I was aware of until the discussion a few minutes ago, on first glance, would take out this double here and this double here. That would then allow this road to pull back, which would allow these units to both pull away from each other and rotate a bit so that they're not facing right into each other. And then again, we could look at relocating, if those 2 units were there, the adjacent grouped units to also improve the layout.
See the one to the right of that one, Glenn, that you just were
the
at?
right of here?
See to the right, the 3 cluster right next to it, right here? Right to the right of that, yep. Right where you
Oh,
were.
these.
Yeah. What about mirroring that one to the one over here on the left side, where there are 2 units on the far left here? Right above the one where you want to remove them.
actually, I mean,
See those 2? Nope, the other way.
Yeah, and I understand.
Those
You're talking
3
about
there.
these
See the one
3.
over on the, coming over to the right more?
I think if we
Nope.
lose this, just to say what I'm thinking, is that this one pulls back and rotates, this road moves over, and I think you then can improve that
Yeah.
3 group. But I think that there's definitely
Yeah.
some discussion that can go forward with, the geometry of the layout. I guess the question is, are we happier with this type of layout of the community as opposed to the very linear? Because that was what I was told was the main goal. And then we can fine tune if we say that 4 units is what you folks feel is an appropriate reduction, then we can go back, they can go back and adjust the geometry, address some of the other concerns that were expressed this evening.
Okay. Yeah, do you have any thoughts?
Mr. Chairman, if, I'm very concerned, this is a 55 and over community, people are going to want to walk around, they're not going to want to walk in the streets. I think you need a sidewalk system throughout the entire project. I don't see how you put a sidewalk on an 18-foot roadway. You mentioned 2 buildings. Could you achieve anything by taking out 4 duplexes? So instead of,
I mean, I
what would
guess
that,
I mean-
I'm looking at, quite frankly, I'm looking at this being 20 buildings or 40 total units. That's the number I have in my head to get to the goal that I'm trying to get to.
I guess that's where that crosses beyond my purview to tell you how many units are appropriate. Of course, the more space we have, the more opportunity that gives us for both open space and for adjusting geometry. So I guess that's kind of, I would look to you folks to come back and say, okay, we feel that this is the maximum number of units appropriate, and then I can work with the applicant, with you folks, as to how we can get the best geometry out of that. But sure, I mean, fewer units, you've got more space to work with.
One question I would have is, how similar would this be to River? Are you familiar with River's Edge?
Not really, no.
I was curious, like, how?
But if you go back to that split screen,
Yeah, I'm thinking really in terms of, if you were to walk around both of these, would they seem similar?
They would seem identical.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Are they the same buildings? Are they the same fundamental buildings?
they're not, because we introduce them. Actually, yes, they are. Actually, the ranches are exactly the same. Proposals that you have in this plan, you have.
There are no multi-stories at River's Edge, correct?
Actually, there is. There's some 2 stories at River's Edge also. Probably about 30% are 2 stories at River's Edge. And, unit count is really a deceiving number, too. Because you could take, if you look at this, what I'm hearing is that it's too dense, they're too close together or something with that. But I could put 30 units on this plan, and each one is 6,000 square feet, each house or each unit. I mean, and you could cover the whole area up. I could also do two, like I mentioned before, a triplex or a quad building. I don't think they're as attractive, and I really wouldn't want to do anything like that. And you take away separation and combine two buildings together, and it spreads things out again with it. So, I mean, another option is the way this is set up now and the way we're going is it truly would be a condominium. There's no way to really make this a subdivision. It would be a condo project, but if the numbers are reduced drastically enough, maybe there's no age restriction, and we do just regular single-family house lot with 30 house lots or so and four-bedroom houses or something like that also is an option. So, I mean, looking at this and what was presented to the town is it was trying to minimize school-age children, traffic, offer a place for people that live in Norfolk or local areas to be able to stay here and stuff, ranch-style houses, single-floor living, master bedroom, first-floor living. That's what we were trying to do, but if it's square footage or unit count, I mean, there's so many different ways to get there. What I'm hearing is it sounds like density with that, but realistically, the setback between buildings here is very similar to the village that people like, and I'm not saying that's exactly where we want to go, but I am saying that I can make these buildings bigger or smaller, or 3 units or 2 units or 4 units, to make them seem further apart also as part of the equation. I do like some of Glenn's comments. I think those have merit too, and I think there's multiple ways to get there besides just reducing units. All I'm asking for is a little direction, because from this meeting here, I can't make any decisions or do any guidance with that. I do have to talk with Sam and Norfolk Holdings from New York there. So I am limited in what I can say. I'm just trying to present the options, that's all.
No, I think we should.
Mr. Chairman?
He's gonna consent to it.
Yeah, I know.
Mr. Chairman, I do have one question.
Sure.
Just so we all understand, these two plans are presented at the same scale?
They are, yes.
Okay. The one observation I'd like to point out is, when I look at these roads, and they kind of just end in this, personally, when I look at that, I think that's a nightmare, where it's an 18-foot road going in that has driveway back up here, back up here, back up here, and the same for this one. If you pull up that way, because this is really, you can get two vehicles to barely pass each other. And as I'm understanding, these are all 18 feet wide?
Those are all 24-foot wide.
I thought it was explained.
Are they all 24, you said?
The driveways are 18 or less.
Okay, yeah,
So
but the
they're
roadways
called-
are 24, right?
Right, but they're calling this from here back driveway.
Yep.
So that's 18 feet wide.
Okay.
And to me, that's a nightmare both to plow and to get in and out of your driveway. If people are all parked in their spaces, there's not a lot of place to maneuver. I think that this solution actually is better than what was done there, from a layout standpoint.
Mr. Chair, we seem to be spending a lot of time comparing these two projects, and I want to advise the board that this isn't about, is this better than River's Edge or not? I mean, you shouldn't be judging this project based upon how it compares to another project. There could have been a lot of different factors for why that project was approved, for why the conditions were put on that project. I'm not familiar with the permitting, what happened at that time. So I think I don't think it makes sense to compare this and say this is better in that respect than River's Edge, and for somehow that means that this is acceptable. I think you need to judge this project on its own merits. And I think another piece that's really missing here in terms of, actually, before I go to that, I think I agree with what Tom was saying in terms of what's important to look at. It's not so much the density, it's really the intensity of the use of the site. So you're right. I mean, if you could build, 30 McMansions of 6,000 square feet, and you'd be taking up as much of the space on this site as you have with this number of units with that are smaller houses. So it really doesn't. It's not so much the density, the number of units. It's really I think what I'm hearing the concern is just the overcrowdedness and in all these driveways and buildings scattered all over the place. So I think that's the issue, and the question is, how do we solve it? Are there ways to improve it? I lost my train of thought, but that was my main point.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's, I disagree. I think it's entirely appropriate to take a look at the development patterns within the town and take a look at existing or very much comparable projects in the town, whether they're approved under conventional zoning under 40A or 40B. I mean, that's what, that's what the DHCD wants you to take a look at, is to try to mimic or replicate development patterns that are consistent within the town. And so I think this development pattern is entirely consistent with projects that have been approved in the town. And actually, you've heard tonight it's an improvement on the layout and the circulation of what's been approved by the town and heavily reviewed by the town by another board. So I think it is certainly appropriate to take a look at that from a planning perspective. Yes, no project is the same, but certainly in terms of the circulation and the patterns and what's out there today, I mean, take a drive down River's Edge and take a look at it. Do you like it, or if you don't like it, let us know. That's a living example of what's out there today in terms of a development pattern. If you want us to reduce density, then maybe we eliminate the age restriction and we go back to a much less dense project. We can do that too, if you want us to go that direction. But I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm just saying that I think it is consistent with the development pattern that's out there today.
So I agree that it's constructive to look at existing developments in town and think about what's good about those and what's bad about those. But it certainly is not correct to say that a 40B project should be judged based upon what's in town. I mean, there could be bad decisions made in the past in town that we should not be emulating. So, and I'm not saying River's Edge is bad or good, but I think projects need to primarily be judged on their own merits, and you can look at other projects to see how they fit, and you need to be consistent in your decision making to some extent, but you don't have to be wedded to that. My other point was going to be that I think that a critical piece that we're missing from the conceptual plan, and it is a conceptual plan, it's not a criticism, but we don't see the topographical changes that would be proposed. And this is a fairly steep site. We talked about that a little bit at the last meeting. There will be grade changes, and so another factor here is if we're talking about pedestrian walkability for seniors on the site. Are there going to be are there going to be steep grades in any of these driveways? Are there going to be retaining walls? Where are those walls going to be? And that may have impacts on what this looks like if there's walls over the place. Or there might be questions about the impacts of this dense development to the wetlands they're very close. I mean, a lot of this development is within the buffer zone. Are you going to be building walls in the buffer zone? So there's a lot of questions that need to be answered when we get to a next iteration, a next phase of design work. But that's just something to keep in the back of your head.
Right. Can you, with respect to the buffer zone, can you point out what is the buffer zone? Like what are those lines on the southern side there? Is there a river or something right there? A little stream or something?
Like grade changes.
I'm just not sure. There's why does the project stop at that? Let's say that red line.
Sure. So this, excuse me. Let me go back to. Actually, the black and white's probably the easiest. So this is a piece of stream right here, which has its own buffer around it that you see here.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Which is 200 feet. Then this is the wetland here, which is kind of tributary to that stream. It's flowing this way, and that has a 50-foot offset and a 100-foot offset.
Oh.
So that's what these lines are here.
Okay.
What's that, John? Right, and then around the entire project, we've dedicated a conservation restriction on this land that needs to meet a certain number of acres, which we need to continue to meet with any revised iteration that we come up with here.
But the inhabitants of this project, though, they could walk out into that area, and you can do that?
Yeah, there's no physical barrier there stopping them. I mean, this will be occasionally wet here. This will be perennially wet right here, but they can walk in that wooded area.
It's wooded, I mean, it's not walking trails or field, it's a wooded area.
Okay.
Yeah. On that, and again, I think and nothing against either Matt or Glenn, I think at the last meeting, we talked a little bit about bringing in Davis Square Architects, who, I guess, according to Dan, do a lot of this, that of conceptual look. I would suggest that at the board's discretion and Tommy's approval, maybe to get a working session, maybe looking at, again, not reducing the number of units, but again, looking at the conceptual layout, and maybe the unit count changes based on that. Maybe a working session between Matt, Glenn, and I think it was Cliff Bowler from Davis Square. And the other suggestion I had is maybe we need to do a site walk out here, to sort of try to understand, see where these units are going to be laid out as a board, so we can sort of get a better idea of how they're going to look from the Village Green all the way back to the buffer area.
And you know, not to sort of beat this thing to death, but it might not be a bad idea to take a swing through River's Edge, because, and I'm only saying that just so you have a sense of what it, like you said, what it feels like, because it's really hard to understand. It's hard to get a feel for it when you look at that. But if you cruise through River's Edge, you can see it. You can see the distance and the spacing and the parking and so forth. You get a much better sense of what this could potentially look like.
I think we need to maybe do a site walk out there and look at
I mean,
this.
it's the
try to get a
equivalent
feel
of
for it.
one of those computer-generated things, but you see it in real time. And if the developer says that this is going to be nearly exactly like that in terms of its feel, it's probably a good idea to just buzz through there and take a look at it.
I'd suggest that you take a look at 106, 108 Main Street, drive down there.
I have.
Those are 22-foot wide streets, which I won't do again personally, and these are 18. So
Well,
go look
that's-
at what 22 is, and these are 18, so just
And I
go
agree
check
with you,
that
Mike.
out.
I agree with you, and that's
Check that out.
that's kind of the funny thing about this, because River's Edge and Main Street look completely different. They look absolutely completely different. So that's what I'm trying to say. The look and feel is completely different.
Well, the more important one, I think, is Glenn, Tom, your thoughts on trying to get get the three architects together and do another look, just, again, using this current plan, taking a look at it to see if we can make, I like the 2 units. I don't really want to go to a triplex or a quadplex. I think we'd like to keep this style of unit. I think it fits the over 55 age restriction. But I think I think we maybe need another fresh set of eyes who, again, looks at a lot of these. And I don't know what your thoughts are. Cliff came back to us from Davis Square Architects and gave us a rate of $195 an hour. He did with a estimated between, I think it was 6 to 10,000, I think it was, or something like that. But it was $195 an hour. Are you opposed to maybe trying to get the 3 architects together to see if we can come closer to a plan? And then also, the second thing was, again, maybe a walkthrough of the site. If you can mark out, obviously the entrance, some of the perimeter areas, so the board can see where this development's going to lay out.
That's what Tom and I were just talking about, that, is we could get our survey crew out there to maybe put the center line of that proposed loop road in, just to give people orientation when you're walking around with a plan to where we are within that site, because you can get lost in the woods. It's hard to kind of understand where you are orientation-wise, but we could try to get that together in the next couple of weeks, so you could do a site walk, and then maybe have, depending on what you think, some kind of work session after the site walk. Let me turn it over to Tom.
Well, can I actually
Mr. Chairman, if I may add one more comment, I think Tom knows that this board will work with you. We've done other projects together. We like working with you. You do nice projects. in this current, and having said that, in this current form, I can't support this, personally. I don't like this, I can't support it, it's too dense, so I just want to get that out there. But the other part is, we do enjoy working with you, we think you do good projects. This current iteration is not one I can support.
Mr. Chair, before
Okay. Let Dan go then, Tom.
I wanted to just clarify a couple things on Cliff's proposal and the point of it.
Okay.
Because I think, we've had Glenn have an initial meeting. Cliff's background and expertise is really on site design, and so what he's done for a lot of zoning boards around the state and several projects that I've been involved with is he comes in, big picture, he'll present a fairly comprehensive peer review memo or a letter. He's truly a peer reviewer, and we'll sit down and we'll have a work session, a meeting, I would suggest, with a member of the zoning board, myself, and I think Matt, you're basically the site designer, right, for this project, and so I think, just to clarify the terms here, you're not an architect, you're more like the site. Yeah. So it's really planning. I think that's the issue, and I think that, that's the issue I'm hearing from the board members. It's not the architectural style of the houses. It's more the site design and the planning of this property. So just to clarify that's the intent of this peer review, if we do it, is to have some input on site design.
Just a couple of comments, I guess. First, likewise, any comments back and forth here, it's all constructive criticism. I enjoy working with the board here and everything as well. I guess I can't give an answer definite tonight. I do have to check in with Sam on this to make sure. I don't see it as an issue. I guess the proposal that was given, 6,000 to 10,000, I guess that amount range is probably out the window, and it's an by an hourly thing since it's gone this far, just so that I can explain it to him properly, because I'm going to have a conversation tomorrow with him, that it would be $195 an hour to have a consultant look at it. I would want to have a caveat or something, a time frame. Because I feel like we lose too much time with some of this. So if we're going to sit down with them, it would be in the next 2 weeks, and and we could have some type of input for the next meeting, because we really can't do anything else engineering wise or design wise, anything until we sort of get this layout work together. So I think would want some type of time frame with it if we were going to do this. And also, I was just running through my mind here. I was thinking about staking out and what you and I, Matt, had just talked about. And I'm saying to myself, if the designer comes in and changes things so dramatically or has great ideas or whatever else, do we really want to stake out this plan, or do we want to stake out something that everybody likes? So I just don't know if we're jumping the gun a little bit on that.
I agree, that's fine. Yeah.
So.
If you want to wait, or do you think?
No, I agree with that.
Yeah, I think wait till we get a plan we like, and then we can look at it.
As long as the property corners are staked, so we know
Right.
where the entrances are and,
Oh, yeah, that would all be done at the same
No,
time and
that's,
things,
we don't
yeah.
want to do it twice, so that's fine.
Yeah, I think it makes more sense to see something on paper than see what it looks like in the field as well.
So
So,
in terms of process of selection, just so the board understands, it's the peer reviewer, you can select, you can decide that you want to hire a peer reviewer, you can propose a specific person or firm, and the applicant can only object if there's a conflict of interest or lack of qualifications and things like that, or if the applicant thinks that the subject matter is inappropriate, that this isn't something that is necessary, they can object to that. I think in the interest of time, if you're inclined to go forward with this kind of peer review, I would make that decision tonight, and subject to the applicant's, you can reserve the right to object, and you can speak to your partner, and if there's an objection, you can raise it. But just to keep things moving,
Yes.
I would suggest taking a vote, making a decision tonight to hire somebody if you're going to go forward with this, and we can get the contract signed and get Cliff out here for a meeting over the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
One question, do we need to, the big change I see is the non-linear aspect of the new layout, which looks attractive compared to the linear layout. Do we need to at least offer any guidance in that respect, that we like the change in the non-linear layout and these kind of little separate neighborhoods within it? Or are you just gonna let the peer review go?
I think he just
I
did.
think we just gotta let him go at it. and-
Go at it, okay.
Look at it.
But without any other opinion from us at that point, that we just, we've seen like 3 or 4 different layouts at this point. We've seen 3 or 4 layouts at this point.
Mhm.
But we don't wanna show one that has any, like anything that we like better than the others, or just,
Well, they can review the tapes too.
Right. okay, I just wanna say, like I said, it was a nice change to see the different layout here than we've had before. The density is a concern, no doubt about it. But like I said, it'd be good to know that we're offering enough input from our point of view going into the next review.
Well, I think that's what the working group, we can talk to him a little bit about the working group, you know. All right, so, could I get a motion to hire Davis Square Architects to do, I guess, do we want to call it a peer review of the plan? Okay, do I get a motion to hire Davis Square Architects to do a peer review of the enclave design layout?
I'll make a motion that we hired Davis Consultants for a peer review of the enclave layout.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and you're gonna, you'll coordinate with Cliff to see if we can we'll get the contract signed,
Yeah,
and then
we'll
you'll,
circulate some dates.
you'll let us know if you have,
Yep, and just to confirm, it's $195 an hour, and that's what I'll explain to Sam, and I should be able to, he's expecting a phone call tomorrow that we'll talk anyways, and then I'll send an email to Amy and.
Yeah, I mean, just so you, out of photos, I mean,
Yeah.
what I'm expecting is that there would be his initial review, which is probably 5 to 10 hours. There's going to be a meeting. He's going to produce some kind of memo for the board, and we'll ask him to come to a hearing. So I would expect that scope is going to be somewhere in the $5,000 range.
Okay.
Would you also suggest that the first meeting be a sit-down?
Yeah. Yeah,
As you said, before one member of the board.
right, a work session followed up by a memo, and work session, memo, zoning board hearing.
Yeah.
That's what I think would make
Yeah,
sense.
so a work session in the next 2 weeks, followed by a memo, and then the next board meeting, whenever we set that, we
Right.
could establish that layout with everything, so we can move forward on engineering after that. Is that
Yeah, I
sort of
mean,
the
you may
idea?
decide after the work session to
Mhm.
make some changes. So, I mean, things can move in different directions, but
All right,
okay?
thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
A question for Matt. That first run, what's the length of the road from there to kind of, if you pull in this direction, to me, it just feels like you're looking down, you know, we've been discussing getting rid of that linear feel. But I guess my question is, what is that length looking down the roadway there?
How long is, I don't have that number, Devin, I'm sorry, I don't have that with me. But I can email that to you, I just don't, I wouldn't be able to guess at it, it's a couple hundred,
Just-
probably 200.
Just my thought is, we're kind of looking at just everywhere else, and to me, really the linear feel exists to the greatest extent on the site, right there. I don't know if that's something that could be addressed by Davis Architects, and if they can possibly look into something in that area.
yeah, I was going to make the same point. I think it has been improved, so it's not as linear as it was, but you still do have that long run there, and you've got other short runs that, yeah, the problem is still there.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. Any comments from the public at this time? Anybody here want to make any comments? Okay. Len, anything else? Okay. Okay. All right. All right, wonder if I could get a motion to continue to the, actually not a motion to continue. Yeah, motion to continue the Enclave public hearing. We're going to do a working session, so we will get in contact with you, Tommy. But we have the 20th of June open. Do you think we might be able to, you think, it gives us 20 days, do you think that's too tight? What do you think, based on your experience with Cliff? And
it's a little tight, and it would, especially would be if you're going to make any changes, so.
I think that's a little tight.
Okay.
The time, have a work group session, some feedback, I'm thinking that's tight. I
Okay.
appreciate the effort, but.
Nope.
I think it's tight.
It'll be July.
That puts us to July 18th. Would be our next,
Right, our next, we normally have a meeting on the 4th.
we're not going to have a meeting. John's going to have a meeting on July 4th if anybody wants to attend it. The rest of us will not be there, though, but, no. The COMCOM meets on the 11th, so we can't do the 11th, so the 18th would be the next, which, well, 1 week, I don't think it's going to.
Matt's out of town on the 18th, but he could have somebody fill in for him. I'm hoping there'd be enough positive feedback and things from those work group sessions that we could have something that everybody's agreeable to by the 18th. But I mean, it wouldn't preclude us to start going a little bit more into engineering.
What about the week of the 9th, if we could do one on a Tuesday or a Thursday? I know you have COMCOM Wednesday. What about the week of the 9th of July?
Is Wednesday, the 27th, too soon?
That could possibly work.
I just think if the 20th is tight, I thought 27th is probably just going to be just as bad. I would rather go into July.
Okay.
Do you think we could do the 10th or the 12th? Are you around, Dan? The week of the 9th?
The week of the 9th is fine, yeah.
Matt, is the week of the 9th work?
Yes, thank you.
Bill, Glenn, that works for you guys? You want to try the 10th or the 12th? Want to go with the 12th right now, and we'll verify that for the current time?
Thursday.
It would be a Thursday, not a Wednesday. We can't do a Wednesday because of COMCOM meets.
Okay. What's the date, Chris?
It would be the 12th.
July.
Okay, you can check. And we'd be here, so I don't think we'd have a room challenge, correct?
Probably not.
Okay. Okay, so could I get a motion to continue the public hearing for the enclave till July 12th at 7 o'clock PM here at Room 124 at Town Hall?
A move to continue the public hearing for the Enclave Village Green to July 12th at
7 PM.
7 PM.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thank you. Hold on a second, yeah.
Yeah, do you want to talk?
Yeah, let's talk about it. Hey, Chris, could we take a 5-minute recess? All right, I guess we've already actually probably solved the one problem, Amy, which is we are not going to meet on the 4th of July, except unless Don wants to come here, he's more than welcome to. And we're going to meet on the 12th of July. And then, obviously, next week, we are planning on the Enclave, and we're going to have some reviews by LSPs with regard to this site.
That's next week.
Enclave or Abbeville?
Abbeville, sorry.
Abbeville.
Abbeville.
Is that, where is that?
That's next Wednesday.
Junior high.
At the junior high.
No, the,
Freeman Kennedy.
Freeman Kennedy.
Freeman Kennedy.
Freeman Kennedy,
Right.
Freeman Kennedy.
yeah.
Correct.
Oh,
It's
okay.
the elementary school.
Cafeteria.
It's the one on Boardman.
He knows that. He knows that. Wise guy. All right, and now for our next little, since we all have dealt with a lot of interesting cases over the last couple of months, and I think we've done a pretty good job between appeals
He'll make them organized.
and non-conforming uses, I thought it would be appropriate that we have a little memorandum, a memory of what we all got to do. So, for the board, Mr. Kaliza, Mr. Hanson, Ms. Saviano,
Wow.
Bob, Amy, Medora, and Devin. This was Mike and I were thinking of this. This was I talked to Mr. Bremlis, and I actually met with Mr. O'Neill on Lake Street. And these are some of the products and the bowls he makes using native wood from Norfolk. So Mike and I thought it would be a nice suggestion, based on what we've been doing the last couple of months, to reward you all for your hard work.
Thank you.
And,
You can have your Cheerios in this bowl in the morning.
that's right. You can
Sorry,
fill them with candy and bring them to
sorry.
this
My bowl's
evening.
that big.
Okay, here's one here for you. You want this one?
These are the $800 bowls discounted to $49.99, so that we met the laws.
I was gonna ask
Yeah,
Chris.
mine's hickory.
I was gonna ask.
What's yours say?
Hickory.
Hickory.
Yeah.
I have mine already at home.
Oh, no, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is hard.
Yes, that's his business card. He does some very nice work. It's amazing, some of the bowls he has that are based on some of the native wood here in
Gentleman who
town.
cuts the wood down here. This is the gentleman?
No, the gentleman who cuts the wood actually provides him, sells him big chunks of wood.
So who is this?
And this is what he makes out of it.
And he lives on Lake Street.
And he lives
This
on-
gentleman lives on Lake Street?
Yeah, yeah.
Mr. Bremlis provides him.
And does a very nice job, so
Does
I
he
thought
do
it was-
where does he do these? Does he do
He does
them?
them right in his basement. He's got
Does
a
he
lathe.
really?
Yeah, very interesting.
Oh, that is unreal.
Some free advertising for Mr. O'Neill on
There you go.
Norfolk Community TV.
Well, we're working on that advertising. All right, do I have a motion to close the May 30th zoning board of appeals meeting at 8:44
Quick
PM?
question? Oh, any minutes we need to review?
No, we don't have any minutes tonight.
No? Oh, okay. I thought we had made some.
Yeah, we have some, but we didn't put them
Okay.
on the agenda.
Okay.
For clarification,
Yes.
on any of the summonses that we're served.
Oh, yes, good question.
Is there ever a situation where, as an individual member, we have to sign and return, or do anything other than refer it to the town council?
Refer to town council, and then if there's, like, tomorrow, I've been summoned to go to court tomorrow for run and gun as a witness, so you would be notified separately if you were going to be summoned.
So the package that I got from Run and Gun is
Correct.
not.
It is not a summons for you, correct?
Okay.
Correct.
Basically, do we just give it to the town council?
Yeah. Town
I-
council responds to it.
Right, but saying, but once we have received them, should we give them to, let's say, Amy, she'll give them to whoever should have them? Like, do we need to keep them in our possession at this point, once we receive them?
I
You
think
know,
there was a sheet that you had to
There's
fill
a
out.
sheet you fill out.
Fill
you
out,
can-
return it to notify them that you did receive it.
Right.
There's a-
The one-
Don't fill it out and return.
But I will ask Dave DeLuca tomorrow, you know,
Right.
we would like to
Just
handle
want the
that.
guidance on what we're supposed
And
to
I'll
do.
make sure Amy knows to send you an email as to how to, if you have to return
Yeah, my
it.
desk seems to be a little crowded with some of these lately.
So do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
I make a motion that we
Zoning
close the
board?
public, I make a motion to close the public meeting of March 30th, May
March
30th.
30th?
May 30th, I'm losing track now, May 30th, 2018. At
Second?
8:45.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you for the bowls.
Thank you for the balls.
Yeah, thank
Mr.
you.
Reader.
Very nice.
Very nice.
Chris, I'm looking